Hi, Hank. How are you?
I'm
Happy
great. How are you all?
Sunday.
Good.
Welcome to our book club. Thanks for being with
Oh,
us.
my pleasure. Of course. I'm delighted. This is great. Where are you all?
A little bit of all
Yep.
over. So I live in Woodstock, Georgia.
And
I'm Brittany.
I'm in Kennesaw, Georgia, and I'm Brooke.
I'm Bailey. I'm in Canton, Georgia.
Ah,
And I'm Jesse. I'm south of Seattle.
oh, all right. So, what time is it for you?
It's 9. It's 9 a.m.
Excuse me.
on a Sunday, which is
Hey,
why
good
I'm
morning. Good morning.
with my coffee.
I'm going to be at Foxtail coming up in February.
Oh,
Foxtail
nice.
Book.
Oh, cool.
So
I
maybe
love
we
that
can all get
bookstore.
together at that
That'd be
time for the new
great.
book.
That
Yeah.
would be amazing. Yeah.
I would love that. What
Right,
is it, a
Brittany,
new book that you're coming for?
let me just show you.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in there first. That
Yeah.
sounds fun.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay, that's a
House
beautiful
guest
cover.
insert.
Okay.
Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise. And
Ooh.
look in her sunglasses.
Oh, I love that.
Ooh.
Isn't that
I-
great? I mean, they
yes.
did such a good job with this. I'm so happy about it. So that comes out February 7th. So I think I'm
Okay.
in Foxtail. Let me look at my calendar, which is right here. On February the 8th. It's like my
Okay. Wow.
very first, national visit is to Foxtail. So so I hope we can all get together and see each other at least there.
That would be
Yeah.
fun.
Feb 8th. I'm writing that down.
Oh, thank you.
Same.
I am too.
Brittany, I'll email you about it.
Yes, please.
Perfect.
And
Or
then
send me
I
all
can
your
try to,
emails and I'll email you personally about it.
yeah, I'll try to get everybody together. We'll see what we can do. I'm like, Jesse, is there any way you're in town?
I mean, I'm married to a pilot, so I can just hop on a plane and come home.
Are you really?
Okay. She is.
What airline?
He flies for Alaska. which is
You
why
know,
we do-
that's when I was on the West Coast a couple of book tours ago, whenever that was before the plague. I took my first Alaska Air flight and I thought, I don't know, is this going to be okay? And it was so glamorous and so luxurious and so pleasant in every way. It was just great. So tell him thank you.
I will. It's a really nice airline. They do a
Yeah.
lot of like charity donations in the area, so that's really nice.
Okay,
Great.
well, if you come, Jesse, you can stay with me because Foxtail's in Woodstock. Like
Yep.
it's
Okay.
5 minutes away from my house. So if you can make it work, maybe we can have like a slumber party of some kind.
Yeah. I have to see. I'm putting together my year now with my
Okay, nice.
what it's gonna look like.
Awesome. Well, that's really exciting. That's a fun start. Thanks for
Yeah.
that. That's really, really cool. I'm excited to hear about that book. All right. So we did some research on you and I learned that you're an on-air investigative reporter. How much did that factor into this book?
Oh gosh, I've been a television reporter. This is so crazy. Who's behind you, Jesse?
I'm sorry. That's my cat Arya. She'll
Oh
make
my
an
God.
appearance later. She's just in her wildcat mode right now.
It's so cute. I love seeing everybody's pets. And I still haven't gotten used to that. If I go closer like this, I can see better. I just feel like I should be able to, but I still can't.
It's okay.
I've been a television reporter for 43 years, which is
Oh, wow.
completely crazy. And I've wired myself with hidden cameras and confronted corrupt politicians and chased down criminals and gone undercover and in disguise. So sure, I mean, and also sort of being in the spotlight like Lily has been what my whole life is. So I'm not sure there's any better training to be a writer of psychological suspense than having been a television reporter, because so much of it personally and professionally is similar. Professionally, I started out as a general assignment reporter in 1975, and every single day I had to do a story for television that was new, that was interesting, that was entertaining, that was enlightening, that would change your world, that was important, with a character who you cared about and a problem that needed to be solved, right? Where the good guys win and the bad guys get what's coming to them. And in the end, you want to change the world and get some justice. That's what I did every day as a reporter with a super deadline. The news was on at 6:00 and my story had to be ready, in whatever form it was. And if there were days when I thought, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it, that didn't matter because I still had to write it. So that was a really important thing in in my training to be a fiction writer, is this: some days it's not easy, but it's all about telling a good story. There's just no question about that. So every day as a general assignment reporter, and then starting in 1988 as an investigative reporter, where I did big, long form, highly researched stories. Again, it's all about storytelling. I mean, I don't want you to turn the channel when my stories are on TV, right? And so I don't want you to be able to put my books down when you're reading them. It's that same pacing, it's that same storytelling, it's that same element of suspense and surprise, and that it's going to be worth it to watch it, that you can't wait to see what the next thing is, or you can't wait to see what the next chapter is. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And you have to learn in television too, what to leave out. You know, for a 3-minute story on television, I probably have 20 minutes of video, you know, that I can choose and pick from and weave it into essentially a little movie. And it's the same thing as writing a novel. My novels always start out much, much longer than they wind up, because I decide what to keep. So all of those things that I learned. Then apropos of Her Perfect Life particularly, I've spent the last 43 years in the spotlight. You know, when I go to the grocery store, I better have my hair combed and lipstick on, because people recognize me. We were leaving a restaurant last night, that we went to a restaurant for the first time in like 3 years last night. And I was walking down the street to our car with my husband, and someone said, "Hey, Phillippi Ryan, I know you." And so luckily she happened to be very enthusiastic about it. But I've had other times when people say, "Oh, Hank Phillippi Ryan, I hate you." And I don't even know them. You know, I don't know them. It's just, you know, I'm an investigative reporter, and part of my life is to make people unhappy, because I'm showing you as good guys what the bad guys are doing and stopping them from doing it. So all that sort of complexity of being in the public eye, being in the spotlight, have everybody know where I am and who I am, that all go, and you can see that in Lily, right? You can see that she's very conscious of being in the public when she meets the 2 college students on the street and they know who she is. Those are real experiences. I mean, not that particular one, but that kind of experience happens all the time. And so, yes, perfect question, Brittany. All that goes into the writing of the novel. Not to mention the actual physical writing, which, of course, as I said, I've been writing a story every day with a beginning and a middle and an end. And that's what you do in writing fiction as well. So yeah, I'm so lucky to have been able to do it. I didn't start writing till I was 55, which was 17 years ago. And so I had been a television reporter for a long time before I started writing novels. And you just don't ever know how your life is going to turn out. So I'm sort of a good example of that.
So what made you take the leap to writing novels?
You know what happened? I was sitting at my desk at Channels. It was completely by chance. It was just one of those moments where, you know, my husband and I don't celebrate. I'll tell you this in a minute, because my husband and I don't celebrate the anniversary of the day we met. We celebrate the anniversary of the day before we met. And we call that You Never Know Day, because you never know what's going to happen next, right? You never know what's around the next corner. You just don't know what you don't know. And so your life may be going along in a way that you think it's always going to be. And then 1 second later, it's not anymore, you know, for better or for worse. So in my case, of my husband and me, it was for better. And in the case of the book, it was for better. I was at my desk at Channel 7. And, you know, we can talk about this, but I sort of always thought about it would be cool to be a mystery author, but I just didn't do anything about it. I just didn't have a good idea. And every time I would think about it, I think, yeah, that'd be fun. I don't know. So I just got a good idea. I won't go into it. I will if you want me, but it doesn't matter. I was
going to say, I love your story. So I'm like, this is fun so far. I'm like, so feel free
Yes,
to
please.
elaborate. I think
Well,
we're all loving it. So please.
Thank you. I got this was back in the day where our spam filters weren't as good as they are now. And today you pretty much don't get as much spam as you, but you remember, I don't know if you do, but years ago it was constant. And I would go through my email every morning before I looked at the real email and just delete all of the spams just so I could clear them all out before I started really working. And one day I opened one, this day at Channel 7, I opened one before I knew that it was a spam. I opened it by mistake. And it was the subject line of the spam said, a new real estate deal, a new mortgage deal for you, a new mortgage deal for you, something like that, a new mortgage deal for you. But in the body of the email was what looked like dialogue from a Shakespearean era play. So I looked at it and I thought, why would someone put dialogue? I was a Shakespeare major in college, so I knew it wasn't familiar, but it was the same sort of era.
Mhm.
Why would someone put lines from a Shakespearean play in a spam email with the subject line of a new refinancing deal for you? That's what it was, a new refinancing deal for you. Something that millions of people were going to open, that was clearly sent to millions of people randomly. I mean, it wasn't addressed to me. It was, but spam. And I thought, you couldn't know, the people who sent this couldn't know who was going to open it or who was going to discard it. And why would they do this? And so it went through my head, just like in lightning, faster than I can even tell you it. My brain said, maybe it's a secret message. And I thought, secret messages in computer spam, that would work. What if, who would do that? And why would you do that? And what would be the point of it? And, how would you get money from it? And why would someone die from it? Why would you do it? What would be the motivation? Could it really work? And I thought, that is a great idea for a mystery. That's a great idea for a mystery. And I went home and I said to my husband, sweetheart, I have a great idea for a mystery. I'm going to write a thriller. And Jonathan said, great. He says, do you know how to write a book? And I'm like, how hard can that be? I've never done any. And I was so naive about it that I really thought that because I'd read mysteries and thrillers all my life, that I would be able to write a book. And I was so naive, as I said, and so super ridiculously confident that it never crossed my mind that I couldn't do it. And that book turned out to be Prime Time, which was my first novel, which won the Agatha Award for Best First Novel. And that was really the beginning. Thank you, Jessie. That was really the beginning of my career as a novelist by chance. It makes me so curious, just relentlessly curious about how we get ideas and how our brains work and why sometimes you just can't think of something. And then the next minute you can, the next minute it's there. And where does that come from? And, how precious our imaginations are, that we as human beings are the only creatures that can do that. Make a story up out of just one little tiny good idea, can make 100,000 word award-winning novel out of that. Why? And if I had seen that spam the day before or the day after, would my brain have worked that way? I don't know. I just don't know. So that's where it came from. And when an agent agreed to represent me for this manuscript, she said, so this is the beginning of a series, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure, totally, absolutely. And that was the beginning of the Charlotte McNally mystery series, Primetime, FaceTime, Airtime, and Drive Time. And that's what started it. I've been a novelist ever since then. That was 2005, something like that.
Nice.
Isn't that crazy? I mean,
I was
that
gonna
just
say,
shows, you
it's
just never know.
incredible how life works. And like
Yeah.
you said, it had to be the right time, the right
Mhm.
idea, and it was inspirational enough for you to go home and say, okay, I'm doing this.
Well, I went crazy, Brittany. I worked every night, every weekend. We didn't take any vacations. I mean, my husband ate so much carry-out salmon. I mean, it was cooking went away and all those kinds of things. I was really obsessed with it. And if I had known I guess, how hard it would be on every level of difficulty, every level of difficulty. I might have been more intimidated than I was, but I guess starting a book takes this, a balance of absolute naivete and some sort of bizarre confidence. I mean, I knew how to tell a story, and I'd done it every day for years as a reporter. The only thing I wondered, actually, now that I'm thinking about this, the only thing that really worried me was whether after 30 years of being a reporter at that time, I could make something up.
Well, that's a good point, because everything you're doing is based on fact and reality and research. And now here you are trying to pull something completely abstract together to tell a believable story in the same sense, but maybe no basis on reality.
Well, and that's interesting because, as a reporter, I can only use the settings that I have. I can only use reality. For dialogue, I can only use what an interview subject really says. And sometimes people don't speak in perfect English, and sometimes people don't use correct grammar, and sometimes people don't finish their sentences, and sometimes people aren't really very articulate. I mean, a lot of the time. And so sometimes as a reporter, I wish you had said that a little more clearly, or what, but you can't, what you have,
Yeah.
what you have.
Yeah.
But and the facts are the facts. But in one sense, that's easier because something happened and you just have to find out what it is. And as a storyteller, as a fiction writer, something's got to happen, and you got to figure out what it's going to be and have it make sense. So it's somewhat different. It's interesting because we all know what a story is, from the time that we were little kids and someone said, put us on their laps and said, once upon a time.
Mhm.
We know what the flow of that has to be. That there'd be, the beautiful princess in a situation, and she'd be plucky and determined, and then she would have a goal, whether it was to be the queen or escape or find the handsome prince or whatever she was finding. And there would be obstacles, and there would be battles, and there'd be complications, and then there'd be the big finish. I mean, we know as little kids, we learn to say, and then what, and then what, and then what happens? I want to hear what happens. And that's the same thing in writing a news story. And that's the same thing in writing fiction. You just have to make stuff up. So I was worried about that. I was worried whether I could make stuff up. But at that point, we've all read books. It's just a story. And we think, what would be cool? What would be cool? What would be the best thing that could happen? What would be the worst thing that could happen? What would be the most interesting thing that could happen? What would be the most unique and surprising and twisty and fabulous thing that could possibly happen? You just hope your brain comes up with it.
So what inspired you for Her Perfect Life? Was there some trigger or event?
Well, I think that yes and no, and sort of yes and no. So there you go. I think every book is sort of a Rubik's Cube that you take a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from there, and go sort of and rework it. Rework things that have happened to you, rework things that you've wondered about, rework things that you've seen happen to other people, rework things that you wonder about. I mean, as a television reporter, I've had so many experiences that people would never generally have. I've been in fires and murder scenes and tornadoes and in places in the airport that nobody would ever go, and covered murder trials and have people confess to murder and convicted murderers insist they were not guilty. I mean, I've really talked to a lot of people and been to a lot of places. But also in this particular book, in Her Perfect Life, there were two things that happened, not recently, but as I was thinking about the book, I remembered them, and they sort of became a little bit of the impetus for writing it. The first one was such a long time ago when I was first a reporter. I grew up in Indiana, and my first television job was in Indiana, in Indianapolis. And how glamorous my job was I was in the laundromat doing my laundry. That's how glamorous the life of a young reporter is. I was in the laundromat doing my laundry, and a woman came up to me and said, "Aren't you Hank Phillippi from Channel 13? And I said, yeah, I am. And she said, well, I've got a great story for you. And part of me said, great, tell me the story. And the other part of me said, can I just do my laundry? You know, I'm just here doing my laundry. Why don't you call me at my office? What makes you think that you can just talk to me in the laundromat? So of course she didn't hear any of that. I just said, oh, sure, tell me the story. But I went home and I called my mom, as we all do if we're lucky. And I was whining and I said, Mom, you can't believe this. I was in the laundromat. I was just trying to do my laundry. And this woman comes up to me and wants to talk to me. And my mom paused for a moment and she said, sweetheart, you chose the spotlight. Welcome to the spotlight. And she said, and I never want to hear you complain about that again. And I really took that to heart, you know, because I was happy that she knew me from television. And if she didn't, that would be a problem. You know, my whole career is based on that somebody recognizes me. So I'm not allowed to whine about that. You know, I need to embrace that, whether it's convenient or fun for me at the time, that doesn't matter. You know, this is my job. So fast forward a million years later, maybe 10 years later, I was the weekend anchor at Channel 2 in Atlanta.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, for like, I was.
What
I
year was
realized
that?
Who I'm talking to. It was me and Ernie Bjorkman back in the, oh golly, it was in 1977 to 1983.
Nice.
So you weren't born, but there was Channel 2, and it was during the days of Monica Kaufman and Wes
Yeah.
Stevenson.
Yeah.
And I did the weekends.
Oh, wow.
If you saw me, I had long dark hair. You would never. So me, Ernie Bjorkman, other people that you might know. Anyway, I was anchoring the weekend news. That's very funny that I'm talking to you all about this. Anyway, I drove home at, you know, after midnight, after the Saturday 11 o'clock news, after the Saturday 11 p.m. news. I drove home to my little house in Ansley Park and turned the corner on my little street, Park Street, maybe. And it was just full of blue lights. It was just full of police cruisers with their blue lights all flashing. So it's like after midnight on a Saturday. So I thought, ooh, you know, something has happened here. I wonder what this is. So as I got closer to my house, I realized that the police cars were at my house.
Oh, no.
And so I
Oh,
leaped, I know, so I
no.
leaped out of the car and I grabbed the nearest police officer and I say, you know, I'm Hank Phillippi from Channel 2. And he said, yeah, I know who you are. And I said, oh, well, that's my house. And he said, yeah, I know that. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, we caught a guy breaking into your house. And that's him and the cruiser over there. They had caught him. And he said he was coming to rob you. So I said, what? You know, what? And he said, you want to know why he chose your particular house? And I said, yeah. And he said, because he knew it was your house and he knew you were live on television because you were doing the 11 o'clock news. He knew you were live on television. So he knew where you were at Channel 2. So he knew you weren't home and you weren't going to be home until the news was over. And he figured he had free and clear time. He knew where you were, so he knew where you weren't.
Wow.
And
I'm like, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank goodness he didn't want you, but like things can be replaced. People cannot, not that it makes it any better, but thank goodness he did not want you in that case.
Sure.
But how frightening nonetheless, and to come home and to be like, oh, what's going on? And then be like,
100%.
oh no, what's going on in my house?
Exactly. 100%. And it made me really think for the first time how easy, and this is way before Google. This is way before you could Google somebody's address or, you know, see Google Earth or whatever. It was nothing like that. And I realized how easy it would be. You know, I anchored the 6 and 11 o'clock news. So clearly I was going to come to Channel 2 at like 3 in the afternoon, and I was going to go home when the news was over. And so all you'd have to do would be to wait in the parking lot or haunt the parking lot or stalk the parking lot to see me walk out of the building and into my car. That's not going to be hard. And then you would
Gives
just
me
follow me
goosebumps,
home.
Hank.
I mean, I had a schedule, a very public schedule.
I'm like,
So-
that freaks me out.
Yeah, and that's what the book is about. That is completely what the book is about. So I So, and you read the scene where
Yeah.
there's somebody watching her in the parking lot, how she realizes how easy it would be.
Well,
Somebody sends
Smith, while
flowers.
she's with her daughter at the school, I'm like that, where she feels like somebody is watching her. She can't prove it. She doesn't know, but why have they been called out for this fire drill? I'm like, I had goosebumps at that scene because I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't fathom.
No, but it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean,
It does,
absolutely makes. And the other thing that I realized about that when I was thinking about this book was the burglar didn't take anything from my house, but what if there had been something that was a secret that he saw? You wouldn't have to take it to know it.
Yeah.
So some evidence of something, or some indication of something, or some piece of paper that said something, or a picture of someone, or you wouldn't have to take it. You just have to know it. Some dark secret that I was trying to hide. What if he had seen that? And that's sort of where the book came from. The idea that, as you're saying, Brittany, people can't be replaced. Things can be replaced, but secrets are different, because secrets are secret, and all you have to do is tell one. And nobody tells a secret without a reason. And
Well,
that's
plus, especially with like Lily being in the public eye at that point, like that could have ruined her.
and that's why she had the battle with herself. She wanted to find Cassie, but selfishly, if Cassie was a murderer or had done something really
Or a
bad,
drug dealer, like she was
Right.
suspecting potentially, like,
Yeah.
does she want that to be found out?
Yeah.
Because it tarnishes her perfect reputation.
yes, and also would hurt Rowan.
Mhm.
Okay, when Lily went with Smith, I mean, we didn't, know that Smith was Smith at the time.
I did.
I didn't. I never guess ahead.
I
I
know.
just kind
I know
of
you don't.
go. They all know when we read. Bailey's really good at figuring things out. Brooke's good. Jesse's good at guessing ahead, and I just kind of go for the ride. I don't try too hard to think about it and figure it out, because it's my escape when I read,
Yeah.
basically. So that's kind of what I do. But when she went with him, I was like, why would you get in the car with his van? I'm like, just because he flashed you a badge.
Well, I
That
think
wasn't real.
I think when you want, if you think about it, the essence of her life was, where was Cassie? What happened to Cassie, her sister?
Yes.
And she really wanted to know.
Well, and she had so much fear in general, I think, in life
Oh, yeah.
because of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And I think so it isn't like she didn't know that anybody even knew about it. It wasn't like someone was tempting her with something that everybody knew about, but nobody knew about Cassie. So here's someone who knows about her. How does he know about her? And the idea that he knew about her gave him some standing with her. So if someone said to you, here is the thing that you've always wanted to know, and I will tell you, I will show you, I will take you to her, whatever he said.
Mhm.
And she's a reporter, she's an investigative reporter. She's an intrepid reporter. She's brave. I mean, she's not stupid, but she's certainly tracked down stories and confronted criminals, as we saw if she has a story, she's on it. So she's a professional, but she's really smart. But here's her one vulnerability. Cassie is her one vulnerability.
Mhm.
That ever since Cassie disappeared, it's haunted her where she is. And she knows that nobody knows about Cassie. And here's someone who does. Here's a lead that she's never had before in her entire life. And she might know. And she says, you can hear her, you can feel her thinking about this, but this is, people have a flaw, and her flaw was love. Her flaw was love and desire to find out what happened to her sister, even though there's this undercurrent of, what if she knows it? What if she finds out and it's something bad? What is she going to do?
Well, and do you think if she had a support system, like a real support system, she would have made the same choices?
I mean, if she had somebody that she could turn to and say, what should I do?
Yeah, like if her
Yeah.
mom was still there.
Well, maybe,
if,
but I think in that situation, in the newsroom at that moment, it was like right now or never. And Greer wasn't
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And there was something going on, and maybe Greer had found Cassie too, or who knows, who knew what had happened. And so she just made a choice to find out. She made a choice to find out. Did you ever see the movie The Vanishing? The real one, the Dutch movie, The Vanishing, not the one
No.
with Kiefer Sutherland, but the real one. Jesse, you saw it. Wasn't that the scariest thing you've ever seen? I mean, I wish I hadn't seen it because it was just so scary. But it had one of the same questions, is that how much would you risk to find out something that was the most important thing in your world to you? How much would you risk to do that? So, but then you see the scene in the gas station when she realizes he's parked very, very, very close.
So
and
she can't
open
get
the door.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was just random. It just happened to be that way. He wasn't trying to trap her, I don't think. She just felt that he was. So she's aware, she's aware of the danger.
I was glad she was aware, but I was nervous for her the entire time. I'm like, why on earth? And like they get to the restaurant or whatever, and I'm like, okay, you're good. Walk away now. Like, don't get back in the car, please, Lily.
Yeah. But again, she's made her whole career by being a little bit brave, by being not unafraid to cross a line to get a story. And this is what she does. So
it was fun to put myself in those shoes because they weren't choices that I would make. And so for a moment, you're like, okay, she's brave and she's following the story. And you got back in the car. I wouldn't have done that. I'd have been really happy I got out of that car. I made one poor decision, but I got out of the car. Praise the Lord.
I suppose if people, it's an interesting balance, isn't it? To watch someone do what you might not have done. But if she hadn't done that, she wouldn't have known the answer to where her sister was. So I don't know, would that, you just don't know what you would do if you were Lily.
Well, and that's the thing, you never know until, Hank, what would you do if you were Lily?
If I were Lily, I would have done what Lily did. Well, think about this. I am Lily because I wrote her.
Yes.
And so in order for me to write her,
you had to put yourself in Lily's shoes.
Yeah, it's definitely, like being an actor who subsumes themselves into a role. I sit here at this computer, and when I'm in Lily's point of view, I'm making her decisions. And so that's why, sometimes even in my early drafts, you'll see a lot more decision-making process go on for the character, which I eventually take a lot of it out because it's really me as the author trying to figure out what I would do and balance my own potential personal safety when, it's possible that she wasn't in danger at all. For us, it's a book. We're reading a book, a novel of suspense. So we're being suspicious of everything. But she may not be, she may want what she wants. And she may think, here's a guy. She didn't know he wasn't a cop at that time. And she eventually figured that out. When somebody's ever flashed a badge at you, you just assume that it's
that's a moment of intimidation for sure.
Yeah.
You kind of take that for credible, I think.
Think about if you played it out in your head. What if you said, I don't believe that you're a police officer?
That might not end well.
It might not. You don't know.
Especially if they are a police officer, that might not end well for you.
And she's weird when you ask for their badges, for work. I would not do this if I didn't with the job that I do. This is why I ask. But we have to deal with cops, and I have to ask for their badge numbers and stuff when they come in, and they always are taken aback when I'm like, no, I have to write it down. I have to get this. Because you can tell they're just not used to being asked by people. And I'm like, and people are not checking. They're just taking your word for it.
Exactly. I love it that you're all figuring it out. That's one of the things that as an author, I'm so aware that my readers are smart and that they're trying to figure it out along the way. So I'll think, well, I'll do this. And then I'll think, no, everybody will figure that out. I'll do this. No, that'll be the second thing that everybody will figure out. And it's really interesting as an author to imagine you all reading it and deciding what you think is going to happen. And I need you to know that I don't have an outline, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was
I
going to ask you if you knew
That's
how
one of
this
my
one was
questions
going
too.
to end.
Yep.
No, I had no idea. I don't even know who the bad guys are. So I didn't know whether Smith or whatever his name was bad, or Greer was bad. I didn't know even if Cassie was bad. I didn't know. I just didn't know. Sam, the ex-boyfriend, Rowan's father, at the beginning of the book, he was really bad. And it was all him. And then I thought, Lily wouldn't make such a dumb decision to have a fling with the person who was essentially bad. That even though she made those decisions to have a fling with someone, which is not a wise decision, she did it out of true passion, and everybody's fallen in love, and it was a bad decision. But at least he was a good guy,
Right.
who's married to a good wife now, an honestly wonderful person, and he's an honestly wonderful, happy husband. And sometimes relationships don't work out, and I wanted them to be friends. Finally, when I realized that Sam was good, that's what made the book work in the end. And then that Lily realized that she wouldn't have made such a bad choice, and that she trusted him, and that she let Rowan go with him.
Yeah, the fact that she let
Yeah.
Rowan go with him was a big deal for me.
Yes, and it was a big deal for me too in the book. And that was a real moment in the book, because that's when I realized that she really did love him. It was just a mistake. He's a really good guy. And it was her message to him and to Rowan, I trust you, and here's our daughter.
Well, and essentially, I forgive you, I think, too.
Yeah. And also, sort of forgiving herself as well. I mean, and also obviously, yes, Sam, forgiving him for having sort of been out of their lives for all that time, for which she was quite bitter.
And I think rightfully so, raising a child alone like that.
And that's what I wanted to make her a real person, that that her hashtag was perfect Lily, but she certainly wasn't.
I liked those moments. I like that we got the perspective from her head, because she did feel authentic. She did feel real to me. My favorite parts of the book were Cassie, just because you always left us wanting just a little bit more.
Yep.
When you would flash back, you'd end something, and I'm like,
Yeah, you'd end on a cliffhanger.
oh, like
Yeah.
what? I'm like, wait, no, go back to Cassie. I'm like, it's great that we're back to Lily, but I want to go back to Cassie. I want to
Me
know.
too. And she was an interesting character too, because when I started writing her, she was much more selfish and unpleasant. And that she had sort of gone off to college to show her stuff and finally be rid of her family. And then I thought, maybe I'll make her be good and vulnerable. And, she was 18, and talk about making a bad decision. She's vulnerable, and she was victimized by a bully of a police officer who took advantage of his position and ruined her life to get what he wanted.
Which was crazy. Yeah.
And it made me so mad when she came back to talk to Lily in the bedroom, and then Lily told the cop, and the cop's like, no, it didn't happen. It was just a dream. Go to bed. I'm like, no, listen to the kids. Kids are right.
Yeah.
But it did make sense once we knew who he was and that he was bad. Because at that time, I'm like, why would you just tell a kid it's a dream? Like, why wouldn't you at least
you just dismiss that?
Yeah, like at least pretend like you care, try to investigate something.
Then we know who he.
But as soon as we figure out who and what he is, I'm like, oh, that's why he dismissed her and was like, it's a dream. It's not a big deal, because he was all in this scheme.
Yeah.
But could you imagine being Cassie and going to that apartment and finding those drugs and then being like, was my rosé roofied? Like, am I okay? And then she kept getting tired. She's like, I feel a little bit tired.
Because you can talk yourself into that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I have. I mean, not that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's mind over matter. It's whatever you want to believe. It's that placebo effect. Sometimes if your mind believes it, it's a powerful tool.
Sure.
And so she's yawning and, am I okay? And I'm like, oh no, Cassie.
I feel like if it were myself in that situation, maybe it's the healthcare worker in me, but I would have just ignored what I saw and continued to take care of the person. And in my head, I'm like, why is Cassie like freaking out so bad? Like, just pretend you didn't see it. It's fine.
And I thought that was all a ploy, like him falling down and passing out. I'm like, it's just
Yeah.
a ploy to get her where she's like off balance, not paying attention, and he's gonna hurt her. And she put herself in this horrible position.
Mhm.
At age 18, when
Yeah,
Yeah.
where you
remember when she
don't know
says-
better.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
remember when she's nervous when she sees that it's not a dorm, that it's his
Mhm.
apartment.
Because people aren't tracking the ins and the outs.
Yeah. And she thinks, well, I'm 18. I can do what I want. I'm going to have a life. This is what I'm a grown
Which
up.
I think at 18, I thought that too. I had that moment where I'm like, I could do what I want. I pay my bills. I drive a car. Nobody
Yeah,
knows
and it's
where
a
I
pivotal
am.
time. It's a really pivotal time. And then she was so overwhelmed by it that she allowed herself to be browbeaten. I mean, that scene where he says to imagine the jury, they don't like you.
Mhm.
You did this. And she's going to believe that.
I mean, I would,
Yeah.
I would, that would be very easy to be intimidated at that point.
Yeah.
And she feels so guilty already.
Mhm.
Her best friend, I can't remember her best friend's name, but she's
Marianne.
so
Oh my God.
roommate.
so
So-
frustrated where she's talking to that
Yes.
cop in the back of the
Like,
car. And she's
shut
like,
up,
weren't
shut
you at
up,
the
shut
hospital? And I'm like, oh my
But
goodness.
she doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's harmless. She doesn't realize what Cassie's been involved in, but I'm
She's
like,
innocent.
that girl. Yeah. Just da 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 da.
I'm so glad you could hear that. I mean, that was fun to write.
How do you pronounce Jeremy's nickname? Because I thought it was Jim, but then I was reading it and Marianne was like, Jim. Oh, Jim. Like,
Gem, like Jeremy, Jem, Gem.
so it
Yeah.
is Jim. Okay.
Gem. Did you hear the audiobook or read the book?
I read it.
Yeah, Gem. Isn't that right, Gem? It's like 3
Yeah, it's
books.
Jem.
Jem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Jem. I listened to the audiobook and they pronounced it.
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, because I was like, is it not Jim? Is it something else?
No, Gem.
Which
It
was
was all-
very well done, by the way. The
Oh,
audiobook.
was it? That's good.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
thank you.
was
I
very
can't
well
listen to the
performed.
audiobook.
No?
No, because I know the people who read them are great and I hear their auditions. So I've chosen the ones from a series of actors who are doing it. But I guess because I sit here at this very desk for a year and write the books with my voice in my head. And I can hear the people. And when I hear someone else reading it, I think, well, that's not how she talks. If I could separate it from my reality, I know empirically that it's good. I know that she's good. But it's, sometimes I have, and every author will tell you this, I mean, I have this parallel construction or a rhythm or a music to the story. And, they interpret it their way and I interpret it my way. And their way is great. It's great. It's just not my way necessarily. Although I do have to say for my book, The Murder List, they sent me the first chapter of the audiobook and I was in the Chicago airport. I remember putting them in my little earbuds to play on my phone, the first chapter of The Murder List. And I burst into tears in the airport because that was Rachel North's voice that I heard. And that was great. But audiobooks have become, besides Jesse, do the rest of you read audiobooks at all?
Mhm.
No, yes, no.
I'm
I
a
do.
physical book person.
I do both, but it just depends
Yeah.
on what's going on in life, honestly. I keep
Yep.
the girls really busy book club wise.
Uh,
It used to be just a book a month, and now sometimes it's 2 or 3, and we're doing some
Really?
really exciting arcs where I'm like, we have to read, when we get like Wendy Walker sent us her arc, which is really exciting for her next book. And so I'm like, I have to actually read that one because there's no way to listen to it yet. It's not out. But in the cases where it is, it's easy for me to like multitask. And it makes things better around the house when I'm like cleaning or doing something to have it on, especially when it's a really good story. Like the one day I cleaned out my pantry and listened to like a book in one sitting. You know what I'm saying? Like it just kept me going because I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, I think I was talking to another author about this, and I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, Robin Morgan Bentley, who works for Audible.
Mhm.
And we were talking about how, and his new book is called The Guest House, and mine is The House Guest. So
Guest.
it was really a funny conversation. But But he was saying that he's very aware that when people are reading audiobooks, and he works for Audible, that when people are reading audiobooks, that they're pretty much always doing something else as well.
Mhm.
And so that you have to be so careful in writing a book that you know is going to be made into an audiobook, because it can't be too complicated.
And there have been some that we've read that I think are super, super complicated. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of characters, there's a lot going on, that
Mhm.
they're lovely books, they're great books, they're thrilling and captivating, but it's not the right platform. I think it was Jillian McMillan. We had her
Mhm.
join us, and I can't remember what the book was. It was this year, but she's incredible, so sweet, such
Oh,
a
Julie
doll.
McMillan, yeah, she's
Yeah,
amazing.
such a doll. Loved this latest book, but there were too many characters and too much going on, and so I
Last
listened to
Party?
that. Yeah, maybe. It's her most recent one.
That's her new one.
Yeah, and so we were listening, or I was listening,
No,
and
that's
I'm like,
totally
it
wrong.
was
I'm totally
no,
wrong. That's
I'm like,
Claire McIntosh.
I gotta
That's Claire
look up
McIntosh.
her book, but whatever it was, there just was way too much that was happening.
Was it the
and
Lost Weekend? The last
Long
yes,
Weekend?
the long
long
weekend.
weekend. The long weekend.
The Long Weekend, yes.
There
And
were a
it's
lot of
an
people.
amazing
Yeah.
book, but it did not make a good audiobook
Yeah.
because of all the characters and all the storylines. Like I almost
Yeah.
had to like write notes to myself about who was doing what. So I
That's
could,
what Robin and I were talking about, that, I'm really aware now that at the beginning of every chapter, every scene, to ground the reader in whose point of view it is, when it is,
well, and
where
that
they
was
are.
nice for yours because I knew if we were jumping from Lily to Cassie. And
Okay.
so, and
Right.
sometimes I was anxious to get back to Cassie. So I'm like, oh yeah, Cassie again,
Oh, That's the
wanna
hard
know.
thing with multiple points of view books, is that often readers will really want one of the characters and be disappointed when it's the other one.
I
And you have to
loved
be really
Lily.
careful.
I just so badly wanted to know what happened to Cassie, and everybody else tries to figure things out. And like I said, this is my escape. I read to like not try to figure it out, to be like, oh, I'm surprised. Everybody's like, I saw that. And I'm like, oh, I was
Well, first of all, if you
very
saw it, you're better
surprised.
than I am, because I didn't see it, because I
Well, and
don't.
I think we all talked about this a few minutes before. Nobody guessed your ending, which was
None.
Oh, good.
Not at
none
all.
of us were able to guess your ending. So you had us all fooled.
Yeah.
Thank you. My husband and I will watch crime shows on TV, and I guess the whole time. And I'll say, it's the sister. Someone's going to drown. Oh no, she did it. Uh-oh, he's dead. And my husband, who's a criminal defense attorney, I mean, this is his life. My husband, who's a criminal defense attorney, says, can't you just watch it? I'm
That's
like, no.
That's why I'm like, can't you just read it? That's how I'm like, I just read it and I read to escape. So I'm like, I don't usually try to guess who done it, essentially.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's changed for me about reading as an author, is that I can't just read anymore. And when I do find myself just reading, I know that I've hit a really great book. When I forget to think about whether I would have done that, or whether I would have written it that way, or oh, I've read this kind of book before, or oh, this is so good, I'm never going to write again. Did you read Gillian McAllister's Wrong Place, Wrong Time?
No, we're reading that one next year. We're super excited.
Yeah, I loved that book. Invite me back just to talk about that book.
Okay.
I'd
You
love
know
Absolutely.
you're
I'd love to talk
welcome
with real
whenever,
people.
seriously. You
Yeah.
are so welcome to join us whenever you would like. I can include you on the email list, and if you'd like to come.
That'd be great. Thank you. And it's really fun to listen, I guess, to people talk about other people's books.
Well,
Yeah.
we really talk about them. Like that's what's important
Yeah.
to me, is that we read, and that's what we're here to do. That's what I enjoy so much.
How long have you been doing this, you all?
I started it 3 years ago.
What would you say is your favorite book that you've read of all time?
Oh man.
Well, I was going to say my favorite books that I've read are not necessarily the books that we've read with book club. So I love
Right.
Tuesdays with Maury with Mitch Albom. That's always going to be a staple and one of my favorites. I adore Mitch. He's so sweet. And then he actually picked our book club. We're on his profile of like his chosen book clubs, which is really neat.
amazing.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. And then The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth
That was a good
Stein.
one.
I loved the perspective of the dog. I sobbed through that.
I'm sure.
And then House Rules by Jodi Picoult.
Oh, I haven't read that.
Oh, it's about an autism individual who's on trial for murder, and it's
Oh.
phenomenal. It's so good. Highly recommend.
Good. I'm writing this down. Okay.
What about everybody else?
Have votes?
I'd have to look. We've
Yeah,
read so many.
In the book club, I would say anything by Emily Bleeker. I've really
Hers are
enjoyed.
good.
I really liked Jodi Picoult and Nicholas Sparks' books that we read last year, The Wish and
The Wish was my favorite Nicholas Sparks book. He tackled skin cancer, and it's something that I've struggled with since I was 15.
Mhm.
And
That's a
so
good
that one, just like, I sobbed through that one too, y'all.
But my favorite book in general is Coraline. I read it when I was in 5th grade, and it just has a special place in my heart, and I'll still just like randomly pick it up and read it. I love that story.
That's great. That's so nice to have a book that's so pivotal in your life.
Yeah.
You can just go back to. Brooke and Jesse, how about you?
I really like sci-fi and fantasy a lot. It's usually what I tend to read. And I've loved the J.T. Ellison books that we've read, and then her other series that she came up with, the CIA librarian one, which is fantasy. So those have been a lot of fun for me to read.
Yeah, she's great.
But I
Yeah,
also love Andy Weir. The Martian Project Hail Mary was fantastic. It's best as an audiobook, strangely enough.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that one definitely needs to be listened to as an audiobook. It adds so much to it, and that's not something I normally say. But House on the Cerulean Sea is one of my most recent favorites too. That I read that a couple years ago. Is fantastic
I
book.
love when you talk about books that stick with you.
Yeah.
You know, for years. It's really so, so many books just go by.
Yeah.
And they're fine at the time, but the ones that really stick with you, that's important. What about you, Jesse?
For book club, I'm probably with Brooke, like the J.T. Ellison. As far as like my favorite, I'm all over the place with what I read.
Mhm.
But I really like graphic novels. And so the Sandman series by Neil Gaiman is probably one of my all-time favorites. Transmetropolitan by Warren Ellis is another favorite. And Why the Last Man by Brian Vaughan is another
series.
favorite. Lock and Key is another favorite. I really like my graphic novels. The Boys is another really good series that there's a show now that everybody loves.
The Boys?
Boys. Yeah, it's a graphic novel series. It's really, really good. It's graphic though.
It's superheroes, but not what you think.
It's who polices the superheroes. That was
Yeah.
the whole concept is they're superheroes, but when they have all this power, like who's policing them?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's a good series.
Yeah. Transmetropolitan, it's a little dated now, but it was kind of like, what 90s, early 2000s imagining of what the future was going to be like and what the problems were going to be like in a very like future New York, what politics were going to look like. So that was really fun to read like when I was in college. And so I always
And it all turned out to be true.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how accurate was it?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. It's still further in the future than where we're at right now. But yeah, there were some parallels. There's some parallels for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I read so much.
Yeah, it's great.
Particularly with the type of work I'm in, I really like my cozy rom-coms in between. I do heavy trauma work. And so I like to like come home and read something that's going to be like, I know there's going to be a happy ending at the end.
Jen McKinley's books. She's a great pal. She's on Jungle Red blog with me.
Oh,
nice.
nice.
So we hear all about her new books. She has a column about her newest one on Jungle Red today. You should look.
I will.
Hank, are you reading anything right now?
Yes. I have an interview show on A Mighty Blaze every Tuesday at 4 where I interview an author. And so I'm reading a book a week for that. And I don't choose the books. So we have a producer who chooses the book. So right now the book I'm reading is upstairs called You Never Said Goodbye by Luca Vest, who is a British author. But I just finished, I'm looking at my couch here to see what I have. Just hold on, stay right there.
When she comes back, thank you for the reminder. We need to take a picture. Yeah. Does anybody have the book to hold up?
No, it's just the poster in the back of her.
I saw that. That's why I was like, we definitely need to take a picture.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So
Jessie.
these are just the random ones that are on my pile. Have any of you read this? The Other Side of the Night by
No.
Ooh,
Adam
no,
Hand?
this
No.
looks pretty though.
It's so unusual. Anthony Horowitz says Adam Hamdy may have created a completely new crime genre.
Ooh.
And it's just so unpredictable that you think you're reading one thing and it turns out to be completely something else. And I don't even know how to describe it. I was going to say Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister.
Mhm.
That was one of the books that I thought, I'm just going to stop writing because I'm not this good. I couldn't have done this. I don't know how she pulled it off. There's a great book called More Than You'll Ever Know by Katie Gutierrez, which is about a woman who has two husbands and two families, and at the same time, and one of the husbands kills the other one.
Oh.
And it's really, why don't they kill her? So it's really a heartbreaking, wonderful story. It makes you look at the world in a way that you hadn't ever looked at before. So, and then my favorite, Anthony Horowitz, who, have you watched Magpie Murders on TV? On public TV, on PBS? Magpie Murders. Oh my gosh, it's great. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen. It's about publishing. It's about book publishing and mystery writing. And it's about a mystery author, a very, very famous mystery author who seems to have been murdered. And there seems to be clues to his death in the book he was working on at the time, of which the last chapter is missing. And his editor at the publishing company is on the trail to find the last chapter of the book so she can see what happened to the author. But the cool part about it on TV is that part of the show is contemporary times of this editor and the publisher and what's going on at the publishing company and the murdered author. And the other part of the book is the story of the book he was writing.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
And some of the actors are the same in each. And so they overlap in setting, but the times are separate. I mean, one is fiction and one is fact, but and this is not a spoiler, it happens instantly. The author, the editor in contemporary times is present in the fictional book sometimes, and sometimes the fictional detective comes to her in contemporary times. I can't even explain it. It's the cleverest, best written thing I've seen in a very long time. So it's fun. It's funny. You all know about publishing and books. It'll be even more fun for you because you'll get all the inside stuff. I highly recommend it. Magpie Murders.
I love it.
On PBS. Masterpiece. It's Masterpiece Theater.
Okay. So I think we're going to take our picture really quick before we
Okay.
continue. We always do a screenshot.
Great.
All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Oh, we
Thank
can
you.
make sure everybody's smiling. No weird
Will you send me that? I'll post
faces.
that.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Does your book club have a name?
Shelf indulgence.
That's great. Love that. Well, you all are, I looked at the time, yikes. You all are wonderful, completely. Is there anything I didn't answer or anything I can do for you or anything you
I
need
was
to
going to
know?
ask if you had a career in your life.
If I have what?
If you have a career in your life. I was going to say with all your
Oh
TV.
yeah, that's, not like her.
Career.
Not like her. I mean, I have certainly known, it's interesting because being a television producer means you are not on the air, but you're working essentially just as hard as a reporter. It's just that you're not on the air. So you don't get any credit. You don't get any public credit and no one knows who you are. So there's a sort of a mindset of producers who really do want to be on the air. and their goal is to be on the air. And they can be very envious of the attention that the talent gets. I mean, the reporters are called talent, when really we're working just as hard as anyone else a lot of the time, or harder, 10 times harder.
Mhm.
So there's a balance of power. But there's certainly a balance of attention. And so, yes, I have definitely worked with my producer now, Mary. I've worked with for 18 years. She has no goal of being on television. She's totally in it for the betterment of both of us. If I succeed, she succeeds. If she succeeds, I succeed. That's how we work. That's how we do it. We snipe sometimes like old married people, but because we've been together every day for 18 years, so what are you going to do? But she's great. I love her. She's 20 years younger than I am. But other producers I've worked with are in it for the glory for themselves. And they can be very unpleasant. And that's a very difficult life too. If you don't like subsuming your own glory for the benefit of someone else, if you don't like being behind the scenes, and some people really do, but if you don't like it, it can be very embittering. And I think that's what happened to Greer. And you see at the end, I mean, that was one of the things. She starts to be sorry, and then she just isn't sorry.
Well, and that's why I was surprised. I was like, oh, look at her turning a corner and being not so bitter. And she wrote a letter to say goodbye and that she's sorry. And then she's ripping it up. And I'm like, and there went that.
Because that's realistic.
Yeah, it is. I was going to say it totally is.
Yeah, nobody changes that fast.
Mm-mm.
You think sometimes though with traumatic things like that you might, when you have a gun held to your head, I'm like, there are those moments that I'm like, you think they'd shape you. You hope they'd shape you. And
I don't see how it can possibly not rearrange your priorities, and make you be pretty grateful for what you have. But sometimes it doesn't. I just thought it would be too pat to have her be all fine.
Yeah, I liked that she wasn't. It was definitely, as you say, more believable, I would say. But I did think she was turning a corner, and I was excited for her. I'm like, oh, look at her and her self-improvement. I'm like,
nice people. You're such
she's
nice people.
writing
You want
a
everybody to be
letter.
happy and you want everybody to be happy and smart.
I do. I'm like, oh, look at her. She's sorry. It's gonna be okay.
It went through her mind though.
It
Right?
did.
She's
She wrote a letter.
thinking about it. Yeah.
I like to think that like Greer gets into a different type of work and she gets a dog and like, she's like like she starts doing some self-care and like maybe she becomes, I don't know, like a clown mime for kids' birthday parties. I don't know.
I
She
can
just
see.
does something completely different and her perspective changes and she's like, maybe she never talks to Lily again or apologizes, that's fine. But she just like, she grows from the experience regardless.
Yeah.
You're a good person. You're Jesse. You're all. You just want everyone to be happy.
Yeah.
Happy shiny bows.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is not real life, but it would be
which is not real life.
nice.
Yeah, which is not real life. I mean, you have to figure when people write psychological suspense.
Oh yeah, it's not
people
going to
that we're
have a happy
dealing with are
shiny
not
bow,
gonna
and
be.
we're not reading it for that. I'm like, if everything always ended up happy, shiny, bright, it'd probably be pretty boring.
Mhm.
I mean, if Lily said to Mr. Smith, "Heck no, I'm not going with you," End of
But
story.
that would have been, yeah, book over.
Yeah.
Cassie, who?
Exactly. Or at least a different book. Anyway, let me know when you want to talk about the house guest.
Okay.
I can send you all NetGalley
Great.
widgets if you want that, or I
Yeah,
can send you
Please.
physical books if I can get enough of them.
I was
I've
going to say
just
that would
asked my
be,
publisher for some. So if Brittany, if you'll send me your everybody's address, I can see how many I can get to you.
that would be
Yeah,
amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah.
That would be
I can't wait
fabulous.
for you
We'd
to do it.
actually love, do you want to come back and do that book with us before as a launch? So like we've done that with ARCs, and what we do is we do a playlist, like a Spotify playlist of fun songs, and then we design it like your book cover so it coordinates. we record it, and then we do a recap, like a summary recap, so that we can share kind of on social media and you can share it to promote the book. So that's what we've done with the authors that we've done arcs for, because it's kind
Making
of
me
opened
cry,
up
but-
and been super, well, I'm like, you're giving us something. So we also want to make
Right.
sure that we're giving back to you. And we know that you have to do all your self-promotion. That's what we've learned as we went through, with authors. So anything we can do to help get the word out there. And then you'll get reviews of everybody that does an arc. If we get an arc, we make sure that you get a review. We're at the meeting, we record it and put it on YouTube.
Fantastic. I would love that. That
So
would be
like, if you want to do that with your newest book, we would absolutely positively love it. And then we'll still come say hi in person.
Oh, that'd be great. We can have them big meeting. All right, yes,
Yes.
let's do that. I have just asked my publisher for more. For
Awesome.
more arcs. So they don't send very many. So they're doing that, they send to bookstores, they send to libraries, they send to trades, that kind of thing. But I told them I needed more for my people. So I'll make sure you email me and let me know where to send them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, we'll make sure that everybody that's here gets one, which would be really exciting. And then there's a few more people that are regular that just missed today. So I'll add them to the list. We'll get you all the addresses as soon as we wrap with the picture so that you can post
Thank
it
you,
as
thank
well.
you. And if someone would prefer a NetGalley widget that just gets you in automatically without having to do anything, I can do that as well. So
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Is that what you prefer, Jesse?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I prefer that too. Yeah.
Okay. So
I
I'll
might
go
do
ahead
physical books since I've had so many problems with my NetGalley.
she's had some, yeah, she's had some issues with NetGalley. So,
NetGalley sometimes just decides to be stubborn.
Yeah.
okay. So I'll send you, I think there's probably 3 people that'll want physicals, myself, Brooke, and then Heather.
Okay,
Mhm.
And then I'll give you everybody else's email because I know that's what you need for NetGalley.
perfect. Yay. That's so nice of you.
And
so
then
generous
when
of
do
Thank
you want to meet? What, because I'll rearrange. I planned next year, but I'll rearrange to incorporate. I'm a year ahead. So
You're a
they,
year ahead.
they know.
And we
Well,
know that that is just
That's just my
always
type.
subject to interpretation.
It is.
Things will get
And
moved.
if they do, as things like this happen, when
Yeah.
we meet with authors and opportunities happen, I'm like, I always want to work it in. So I know your book launches in February. So when would you like to start promoting it?
So you're thinking January sometime? Or do you-
Absolutely.
Probably.
Yeah. We could do, does January 22nd work for you?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes, I'm writing it on my calendar.
Okay, so let's do January 22nd and we'll move Mad Honey, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. You're gonna move Mad Honey?
We are. We're still gonna read it because we're
Yeah.
excited, but we're gonna read yours first.
We prioritize the arcs.
We
Yep,
do. I move
absolutely.
things around because obviously Jody doesn't join us. She's kind enough to answer emails and questions, which is really lovely, but she doesn't join book clubs. So I'm like, if we have an arc, I'm like, I move the things where they're not author events down so that we can kind of accommodate schedules.
Okay, all right, I understand that. Well, thank you. I'm very grateful. This is a lot of pressure.
No,
Not at all.
No,
Not
I'm
at
like,
all.
this is like amazing and we're so excited.
Yeah.
Great, I am too. Thank you. This is lovely. I can't wait to hear what you think. It's very nerve-wracking, actually.
No.
No, this is good. I was
Yeah.
like,
We
you're
have
gonna
fun.
yeah, this is for fun.
Okay.
We're just honored and love it. So thank you. Okay,
Very
perfect. I'll send you a summary recap of who needs what when we're done, the date and all of those details.
You're so organized. That's marvelous. Thank you.
I'm pretty type A.
Let me take a screenshot too. So everybody look at the camera. Okay, thank you. Some of those will work. Thank you. This has been
Thank you.
completely great. Let me know
Absolutely.
whatever you need in any way.
Thank you, Hank. You're amazing. You're
Thank you.
super sweet.
Aw, love you all. You're amazing.
Love you. Thanks for
Bye.
spending your
Bye.
Sunday with us. All right. Bye.